Matt, as the CEO of USA Fact, can you tell us what your internet-based pre-employment screening program does for local businesses?
We offer a complete suite of integrated hiring solutions that have stemmed in our back history related to the background screening and employment verification of validating and proving an employee's resume to be true. Specific licensures and certifications in specific jobs are very important. Likewise, obviously, we think of criminal backgrounds and driver records that might be influencing that person's job description and how they're going to have an influence on the risk and liability for that employer over time. Lots of legislature in the industry that handles how this is done properly, done correctly, and doesn't set people up for case law or class action suits, rather. Beyond that, we also help with multiple variety of services that relate to some of the newer products that are out related to social media screening and looking how people's social media presentation of themselves are out there and how that could be a risk to a company, all the way down to fleet driver management services and employee assessments and different elements that will be a complete suite of services that help an employer know they've bought the right person for their total investment and risk mitigation.
How difficult is it for business owners to keep up to date on new employment laws and legislation?
It's a very interesting, dynamic, and fluctuating field and environment that we're in. For instance, that's out there right now has a lot to do with the use of credit information and background screening for employment purposes. And there's a lot of misconceptions in the world about how those are used. When I hear the idea that somebody's going to look at my credit, perhaps, as an American and use that as a way to judge me and my ability to perform my job, especially with the environment that the U.S. has just come through, we have a great deal of empathy for the applicant now and understanding that a lot of people picked up some things that there was no avoiding. But the main thing that's not really understood well within the actual employers or the folks that get on the bandwagon that are against that is that there's a lack of understanding of how those services can often be used. Very often when a credit report is run, it's for a CFO or financially related or a bank-type oriented position where there's some fiscal accountability needed. The other elements of how we use the products that are related to a credit product are actually as history locators, address locators, and AKA locators. And so when we run a Social Security number, we can take the header of one of those reports and actually use it as the core for how we go and look at somebody's criminal background, having never used the actual the actual credit component of that. So there's just one example of the dynamics that are very hot and heavy in the industry right now, and making sure that we stand in the middle right now to help everyone, but are very aware of the states that have already made the decision that they can't be used and what's about to change. It's just one example of so many things that are happening as we speak and in the last year and things that are coming up for 2012.
What are some of the major issues that businesses are facing in hiring new employees, and how do you assist them with those issues?
The main element that we try to do is a lot of education. There's a lot of misconception out there that a background screen is something that you can just check a box and be able to get somebody and have good quality. Interviewed a lot of people in my days, and we all like to believe that we have a good judge of character, and we walk away from that feeling that, wow, there's a great interview, I want to hire that person. But there certainly is that need for the due diligence of how do I get this person to my timeline and have done the full suite of protective risk mitigation that I need to do. There's a lot of products that are on the market that seem wonderful, very fast, good turnaround, instant turnaround with respect to what you can get on the data, but they're very incomplete. They include 3 or 4 counties per state, and they're proprietary, not actually sanctioned nationally. And so there's just a lot of education that goes along with somebody understanding what's your balance. If you're trying to find the mix between turnaround, cost, and accuracy, where do you want to be? Is it just the fastest? Well, you're giving up on the other two. If you want the most accurate, I can do that, but that's a very involved private investigation thing. So finding that balance is really what it's about. The overall suite of integrated hiring solutions that we can offer can help everywhere from finding the candidate in the recruiting phase, getting through the e-recruiting and applicant tracking system element, integrating the background screening and other vendors of tax credits and e-verify and I-9 type form situations directly into a single transaction, such that as you are in the process of finding the candidate that you want, you can do all of your post-offer transactions as efficiently as possible in a reasonable amount of time at a fair price, with accuracy included. And that's the biggest element of what we are doing and what we've been very successful at over our years.
Why is legal compliance in the background screening industry so important?
Well, legal compliance in the background screening industry is something that you will find if you Google very often some changes that are going on with FCRA, EEOC. This industry is now regulated by the FTC as well with respect to industry and companies like ourselves being what's called a credit reporting agency. Even if we're not doing credit, because we're looking at someone's background in a way that we're reporting to someone else, we're seen in a light that we are viewed as a credit reporting agency. And that said, what you'll find is a lot of class action lawsuits that are out. There's one that I can think of as recent as February or March for about $6 million of employment hiring managers not properly submitting the authorization documents for background screening to the applicant. And if in any way, shape, or form there's background screenings being done that an applicant is not authorized, you're setting yourself up for a major, major pitfall. The element also related to which databases or which resources you're using as to whether the data that you used was accurate and up to date and had not been an expunged record or should not have been considered in the hiring method, but it somehow got in front of that recruiting manager, and were they truly able to weigh that out of their mind, even though that record should not have been on the original record? It was something at the court level that should have been removed. That reasonable doubt steps in, and the idea of if you know it was there when you ran the job background screen and you wanted that job and fought to get it and you didn't get it, and there's a found out of an inaccuracy of how you made that hiring decision, it can really come back to burn the employer. So the main element just boils down to having a good adverse action plan if something does happen, the ability to allow the applicant to dispute what's there. There are things that get on people's records. There are identity theft situations. It's very appropriate that in the hiring protocol to really mitigate the compliance and litigation exposure to make sure that you are prepared for the fact that sometimes something might be on the record where that may not be that candidate. It's not the most frequent thing in the world, but it does happen. And if you've set yourself up in a way where you've already fired the applicant, embarrassed him, you're going to probably end up in court.
Matt, can you tell us what is standardized screening and what are its applications both locally and globally?
Well, one of the things that we've done is, with respect to USA Fact being a 34-year-old company based in the Inland Empire and Southern California area, is that we've had a history of really having some close connections with a lot of the industries here locally in this area. Not to mention that how often we're on an airplane to Atlanta or Denver or the Wisconsin area, just for examples, for areas related to a lot of our client base format, which is multi-regional, multi-office enterprise companies that have to have a standardized solution for 25 to 90 to however many offices they may have. And one client, they have 6,000 business units worldwide, and we handle all of their domestic operations. So having the ability for the California recruiter at that office to log in and get the same opportunity to run a screen as the Florida recruiter, noting that those two states might have very different hiring laws with respect to how those are run, and that's our job to make sure it's done properly. That's something that's very, very important to us. Not only standing true to our original home roots here, but expanding ourselves into our new offices in Colorado and to our customers in all the regions that we're at. The element of our new standardization with respect to how it relates to our 2011 business model is we've actually taken the project that's so complex with respect to how you hire and look at a background screen against the fact that 15 people in a room have a very different history of where they've lived and what they've done in the last 7 years. So how exposed and how much risk have you removed if you have just a simple, I pick one county, I pick one county, I pick one state. I've lived in 3 states in the last 7 years just by respect to the job move. And if you're only looking in the local state, you won't know if I was somebody, for instance, who might have gotten in trouble somewhere else. So we've standardized some ways to get people in at some reasonable pricing that allows them to come in easy, but then look at the background of where somebody might have been, and then better determine, I also know that I need to look there. And then later, after those decisions are made, say, but before I submit this, I know I also want to check these areas as well for our standard practices. And so that standardization has become a very complex process for us, kind of a long answer, I know, but getting it to the point where we can have a simplified discussion has been a very good element related to our new sales process.
Matt, can you tell us why is your company so important in today's business environment, and how do you assist businesses?
It's actually a very timely question in reality with respect to the fact that the U.S. is going through very much of a slingshot right now with respect to the rebound, if you will. We are seeing an uptick in hiring trends. We are seeing a very large increase in requests for proposal documents that are coming out through different entities and large corporations. The hiring freeze is not necessarily over, but we're definitely seeing the folks that people have held off as long as they could on projects, as long as they could on their forward momentum to where now those projects that need to get done are requiring the additional staff and manpower and time. What you're having right now is probably a situation where a lot of disgruntled workers have been in positions where they wanted to leave for a while, that are actively out looking for new positions, well, maybe quietly, but as they're out looking and hungry for something new, there's a big surge right now of new applicants on the market. Our job is to make sure that we're helping the client to recognize in that group those that have a very proven and legitimate accuracy to what they've been able to sit down in the interview and express between themselves and the recruiter and the hiring manager, and that we're not in a situation where somebody slipped through that had completely fabricated everything about themselves in order to get a job that somebody who really does need work right now should have and maybe could have had.
Running an operation like this probably requires strong financial support. Can you tell us a little bit about your current financial institution and how they help you with your company?
Absolutely. We're very loyal fans of Premier Bank. My background in coming from both the construction industry and custom building years and years ago, and understanding the value of having a very solid financial relationship with your lender, and basically a very solid marriage, if you will, to give and take when needed, and understanding that the projects are going to need extra investment and repayments will come, and that's something that has to be there. Along the way, I've also had the opportunity to work at the enterprise level and have known, the executive vice president level of large institutions. And certainly there's value in having the buying power of when you're at a large institution as well. But I can tell you specifically, as we've looked at USA Fact in our time here at the executive level, there's never been any instance whatsoever we've even thought about the conception of having a different lender or a different bank involved with our life. We got to know the Premier Bank group pretty early on here as we came aboard, and it's just been a very nice relationship. They've been incredibly supportive to us. I tell these stories of the hiring industry going through a freeze. Well, we're in the hiring industry. It's what we do. So we've survived it and we've come through the other side, but there was just absolutely a phenomenal contribution related to the bank relationship and letting USA Fact continue its 34 to almost 35-year history. So I couldn't recommend them higher as a relationship that we value, and another company I know would value the same thing.
Matt, as you know, with the current economy, many companies are looking for any opportunity to shave something off of their budget. Can you tell us a little bit about why these services are so important and why they should not be cut from a budget?
It's the question that we are dealing with every single day in our conversations. It's the reason that we're viewed as one of the 25 cold call companies that, I've already got a service, I've already got a solution provider. There is a big conception that the processes that people have out there right now are the way to go, and they may very well be. The big question becomes, though, is definitely time to have companies evaluate, have you made some concessions in this particular environment because of the economy and what it was doing that you maybe need to reevaluate. This is actually about maximizing your entire return on investment and your entire staff. And the moment you set yourself up for a situation where you've hired somebody, the negligent hiring doctrine could later find that if you hired him and could have looked and could have found, but you ran a cheap little search for $5 and it came back and instantaneously as soon as you pushed go, I love that search, I want that search too. It doesn't exist. It's not there. But there's been some decisions so that people could check a box and keep moving forward that have allowed this market to very much have to concede to the idea that, well, cheaper is better and faster is better. It's just not the case. If it's a situation where that negligent hiring doctrine puts you in a position where you've hired somebody, let's say, with a history of DUIs, he's driving a fleet vehicle or driving something for you and runs over somebody, you absolutely, when the real background screen is done by the other side's attorney, are in a very, very bad position. The other thing that's interesting about this is that as people now maybe hear this and say, well, maybe we need to go up $20 or so and add a better search, and then they do a search and they find somebody who does have a record, well, then you enter into the negligent retention area where now you know something about somebody who you do have who is a risk for you in a job duty that you would have screened out originally. The human nature is that, well, I want to keep them because they're a great worker. You really have to evaluate that. This is about your overall risk, and saving $1,000 to $3,000 at the end of the year for a mid-sized to good-sized company when that could have cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not $6 million in the case study I mentioned earlier for the case law that just happened. That's the element that we're daily dealing with. It's just that side of we need to educate you on what you're currently doing and how can we help you stay budget-minded but get something that's more than just a commodity that's viewed as just the same as what everybody else can offer. We sell a very similar product to everybody in our industry, but there are some elements that are done with regards to education and expertise and compliance regulation expertise that we can bring to the table that are very helpful to that client.